On the same day that he was arraigned for his federal indictment in the stolen classified documents case, the former president and human crime spree, Donald Trump, found out that a judge in the civil defamation case brought by E. Jean Carroll will allow her to amend her original lawsuit to include comments that Trump made at his recent CNN town hall, which, by the way, came one single day after he was found liable in the first civil trial for abuse and defamation. Now, just for posterity, here's that moment where Trump, apparently incapable of grasping the concept of consequences, defamed E. Jean Carroll on national TV.
Do you think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a room, a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there were locks on the door, so she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay? I don't know if she was married then or not. John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
And I truly hope it was worth the laughs, because that single response may have just cost Trump another several $1 million. At least that's what E. Jean Carroll is pushing for, with the amended court filing from Carroll's team saying, quote, this conduct supports a very substantial punitive damages award in Carroll's favor, both to punish Trump, to deter him from engaging in further defamation, and to deter others from doing the same. And that's the part that Trump doesn't seem to grasp. The whole point of the punitive damages that Trump was forced to pay in the initial defamation case was to punish him and deter him from future defamation. And yet, what did Trump do within 24 hours of getting hit with that verdict? He engaged in more defamation, which is why E. Jean Carroll is now basically saying, clearly Donald Trump has learned nothing from those inadequate punitive damages imposed in the first trial, so clearly we have to increase that amount. And while we don't know what amount she's seeking, the goal is obviously to reach a number where the punishment is felt enough to actually deter Trump from defaming anyone else in the future. And this shouldn't come as a surprise. That is literally how the system works. As violations accumulate, the punishments become more severe. If you go to court with no priors, you might get off with a slap on the wrist. But if you go to court with a whole rap sheet, that is taken into account and the consequences are generally worse. Donald Trump is proving to the court in real time that he is not willing to take the law seriously, that he doesn't think it applies to him. And so the onus will be on the court then to determine a punishment that reaches a level that might actually make the guy pay attention. But clearly, we haven't reached that point yet. And it's not just the money. It's also the fact that Trump is making a mockery of the legal system by so quickly and publicly discarding that verdict. E. Jean Carroll's attorney, Roberta Kaplan, said it makes a mockery of the jury verdict and our justice system if he can just keep on repeating the same defamatory statements over and over again. And none of this should come as a surprise to Trump or his legal team. Here's E. Jean Carroll and her attorney teasing this decision while speaking with Rachel Maddow.
You did force accountability, and then he did it again. The defamation, the calling you a liar, the exact same things the jury held him liable for the day before, he did again the next day on national television. Is that just the way it has to be? Do you think that potentially could be actionable if you were to file another suit? Would it work the same way?
So it's definitely actionable. He's not going to get away with it another time. It's unprecedented for a person to have been held liable in defamation to keep doing the defamation. So there are not a lot of cases that we can look to for a playbook about how to do it. But suffice to say, I have a lot of lawyers who are very busy looking into this, and we are weighing all of our options.
You also have another live case from the time when he was president and he was stating these same untrue things about you, defaming you in the same way. That case is still working its way through the courts. What is your expectation in terms of what's going to happen there?
You're going to see news from us in that case very, very soon, Rachel.
What counts as very soon?
I don't know how late the people work tonight, 2 to 3 days max.
Wow. Okay.
But we're fully pursuing that case. We got a very good decision from the D.C. Court of Appeals, essentially affirming Judge Kaplan that when Trump said what he said about E. Jean in 2019, he was not acting as president. We're quite confident that that will be affirmed, and then we'll be able to move forward with damages in that case. We don't even need a finding of liability because we already have it. and we'll be able to find damages. And there, the defamation damages are much higher, because that was the first statement he made, and that's what really destroyed her reputation as an advice columnist at Elle, and to all her readers and people who trusted her and who looked up to her.
In terms of the timing here, after those statements that are still at issue in this live case, as you mentioned, you were let go from Elle in terms of your job.
Fired.
And you think that was related to his defamation?
No, it was related.
Now, just for some background in all of this, in 2022, New York passed a law giving adult assault victims a one-time opportunity to file a civil case, even if the statute of limitations to bring about a criminal case had expired. And so Carroll subsequently filed a lawsuit accusing Trump of abuse, for which a jury found him liable a few weeks back. But in 2019, while Trump was president, Carroll filed a defamation lawsuit against him for claiming that she lied in her memoir. Now, Bill Barr, who was then the Attorney General, swapped out Trump for the federal government, claiming, absurdly, that Trump couldn't be held personally liable for actions taken in his role as president. And I say absurdly because it is not within the scope of presidential duties to attack an abuse victim, not exactly one of the jobs of president. So that case has worked its way through the appeals process and is now sitting on Judge Kaplan's docket, where he'll determine shortly what happens next. Those were split into two separate cases because the first was against Trump as a private citizen and the other was against him as president, where again, he decided that he could try to use the government as a shield against any accountability. But hopefully the court system finds that Trump's attacks on E. Jean Carroll were not within the scope of his role as president, because of course they weren't, and a defamation trial can proceed against Trump for the attacks that he waged on her in 2019. And if and when that happens, that lawsuit will now be amended to include the fact of the verdict in the 2022 case, as well as Trump's post-verdict statements on CNN and Truth Social. All of which goes to say, if that case does move forward, which again we'll know in short order from Judge Kaplan, then it'll move forward in a much worse way for Donald Trump. And I'll just end with this. Good on E. Jean Carroll for standing up to a guy who, until she won this case, had been able to lie with impunity. It was quite literally not until E. Jean Carroll won this first lawsuit that Trump had ever been held to account for his lies, as dangerous and damaging and defamatory as they were. She suffered an avalanche of attacks, not just the ones that incited the lawsuit to begin with, but also in the way that any Trump attack works, where his thousands of supporters swarm because they saw the bat signal from their leader. For any person to have to endure what she endured is the envy of no one. But because of her perseverance and the competence of her legal team, there's finally precedent for Trump to be held accountable for his actions. And it shows that so long as Trump wants to continue to ignore the law, to ignore legal precedent, then E. Jean Carroll will be there ready to fight. And given the fact that she was able to convince a jury once, it stands to reason that she'll be able to convince a jury another time that Trump is liable every single time he decides to commit the same exact offense. So I'm certain that if given the choice, E. Jean Carroll would choose 10 times out of 10 for Trump to keep her name out of his mouth. But given the fact that he can't, at the very least, it'll be some solace to make him keep paying up every time he does. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.